Previously, on my review of the Bear & Son Gold Rush Bowie, the smaller one, I mentioned I had two issues with the knife. Well, one was about the sheath, and there's some foreshadowing for you. The other was the guard was loose. Did I mention the guard was loose to the point where I was about to name the knife clicky? Well, there's no more clicky. How did I fix it without removing the handle scales? Well, it turns out there was just enough of a gap between the scales and the guard that I could floss a piece of sewing thread in there. So I put a fine bead of Gorilla Glue on the seam and then flossed it down into that gap with some sewing thread. And if you know anything about Gorilla Glue, as it dries, it expands to fill spaces. So let it sit overnight and cleaned it up and no more clicky. I'll let you know if it continues to be solid. But thankfully, turned out to be a fairly easy fix. Now, in the previous video, mentioned how impressed I was with this knife and that, yes, I had ordered the larger one. So what do I think of the larger one? Starting with the out-of-the-box edge. Like its little brother, absolutely shaving sharp. Really impressed with the edges on these. Again, we have Sandvik 12C27M stainless steel. Again, we have a flat saber grind. Let's try it on some paper. Yeah. Really, really smooth. I hear doing it slowly is the best way to test it. A little bit of cardboard. Aha. Yeah, it's like the cardboard's not even there. Let's talk about the sheath, and I'm going to call it a fail. Like its little brother. All right, what was the deal with the little brother? Well, one, the swivel on it, given the balance of the knife and the fact that when it's hanging from my belt, it just sort of spins around and winds up usually upside down. But the bigger issue was it's fairly thin leather with a really thin gap in it to fit the blade. So hugs the blade really, really tightly. And you'd think that'd be a good thing, except between the hypodermic sharp tip and the razor sharp belly, getting it in and out, it was cutting itself to pieces and threatening to put the tip through the side of the sheath multiple times until I forced a break-in, stretched it out to give the knife more clearance to slip in and out without cutting itself apart. And I'm going to say it got worse with its big brother. Same kind of slim leather, slim gap. Hug the blade nice and tight. But now we've got, okay, dangler. I'm going to talk about that in carrying and handling. I'm no fan of the danglers. I think I figured out a way to live with them, though, which we'll talk about in a bit. But getting the knife in and out of the sheath, especially when it was hanging from my belt, because of needle sharp tip, razor sharp belly, within the first hour, I almost put it through the side of the sheath 3 different times, and yes, cut through the top of it. So had to force break-in, put something larger but knife-shaped, in this case a polypropylene training blade in there to hammer out to make some clearance for the blade. Yeah, so it slides in and out, hopefully without cutting itself to pieces, but occasionally, yeah, it still snags. So that makes me really nervous and unhappy. But it gets a bit worse. Okay, mentioned with the little brother that both sheaths are cut so the top edge is straight across, but the guard is not. It's S-curved. So I had to cut a bit of a bevel so that will fit in flush. So I went ahead and did it with this one, and that turned out to be a really bad idea. Why? Okay, another reviewer pointed this out, and we'll get to this when we talk about specs. There's a bit of discrepancy in the specs between what they say on their website. And what it comes down to here, if you can see it, I'll put the guard flush with the sheath, and lo and behold, yeah, the blade's longer than the sheath is in certain ways. That's poking through the end of the threading. Let's talk fit, finish, build quality, specifications, and some interesting discrepancies in those specifications. Build quality, though, like its little brother, just gorgeous, very refined. Now, quick history, apparently when Western went out of business, Baron Son took over the facilities, the equipment, and this is their take on the famous, wonderful W49 Bowie. Now, they couldn't license that name, so they called it the Gold Rush. 49ers, get it? I don't have an example of the W49, but they definitely did an awesome job on this. Another copy-ish of the W49 that I do have is the Cold Steel Wild West, which is a lot bigger, chunkier, more massive, as cold steels tend to be. But this one also definitely, yes, more refined in lines, blade shape, fit, finish. All right, so brass S-curve guard, we'll talk about that in handling. Cocobolo scales attached with a couple of brass pins. We'll see how those hold up. But out of the box fit finish, really excellent. No gaps, no hot spots. And yes, you've heard me complain, including on that cold steel, about big, blocky, square grips on these knives. This one is kind of squarish, but they rounded it for me in all of the right places. Squarest part is right here at the top of the grip, but they slimmed and tapered that out enough that, we'll talk about this in handling, fits my hand really well. Now, okay, comparisons and discrepancies in specifications. Looking at some pictures of this knife where it's offered online, I'm kind of seeing a different blade where that saber grind bevel looks a lot smaller than this. So maybe this is a newer version. But the first number I'm going to throw out at you, $110 is what I got this for at Chicago Knife Works. As usual, I'll put the link down in the description below. Oh, by the way, speaking of fit and finish, no loose guard yet. I will run my impact tests and we'll see if that changes. But for now, no clicky. But discrepancies in the specifications. When you look up the listings on this knife, it will tell you that the blade is supposed to be 8.75 inches. But any way I measure this one, it's 9.5. Even if I take off that notch and ricasso at the bottom, that's only half an inch, so I still have 9 inches of cutting edge. Am I complaining about having a knife that's bigger than expected? No, but I wish it fit in the sheath properly, and that probably explains why it's poking through the end of it. So about 25 centimeters is your overall blade length. Widest point is 2 1/8 inch, about 5.5 centimeters. Blade thickness, uniform, just like its little brother, 4 millimeters. Now, grip length, if I measure the gap in here from the guard to the hook, is a pretty generous 4.5 inches, about 11 centimeters. It lets me do a little choking up and choking down. I'll talk about that in handling. Overall length, of course, you got a discrepancy here as well. Website listings all say 14.5 inches. This is 15, so 38 centimeters. Weight, 17 ounces, about 482 grams. So, yeah, not too heavy, but still feels like it has some authority. We'll talk about that in handling. Point of balance, just barely half an inch, a little bit over a centimeter ahead of the guard. Again, I'll talk about how that feels in handling, but let me go ahead, take it out, and run my impact and durability tests first. All right, here we are post-tests. How did it do? Well, take a look at it. I'm going to say phenomenally well. Test number 1, thrusting and stabbing into lapel. Stab him, multiple layers of thick cardboard over a couple of inches of compressed brown paper bag paper over wood. Looking to test not only penetration, but is there any uncomfortable kickback into my hands? So I do it in the forward grip and the reverse grip, and in this case, with the edge in both orientations, away from me and towards me, North American Bowie style. And as I've mentioned in other videos on buoys with these clip points, using this particular edge towards me grip, I'm finding some very, very interesting things happen, including in thrusting and stabbing. Really liking it, really appreciating it. But I think I've started to learn something new about what happens in the reverse grip. Combination of the power of the ice pick stab combined with angle of attack of this tip, I often get these blades stuck in my lapel. But as soon as I rotated it edge towards me, it was still penetrating very deeply, but it wasn't getting stuck anymore. So there's some food for thought for you. Any discomfort in doing any of that? Nope, none whatsoever. It was a very pleasant experience. So on to the next test. Some people consider this abusive. Hacking and slashing into hard bamboo. I'm trying to intentionally induce a chip or a roll in a fragile edge. So I did it forward grip, reverse grip. How did this do? No damage whatsoever. And this is a very fine, fine edge knife. Speaking of which, on to the next test. Shaved on some boards. And yeah, this is a razor blade. So chopped into some boards. Great chopper. I think the designers of the knife would agree that it's not primarily made to be a field tool, but I think it's certainly useful for that. And because of how well it was doing, I took the risk of going on to the next test, which I didn't do to its little brother. And, okay, and it was small baton. I used a small piece of firewood, but I did baton it through a small piece of firewood just to see how that would go. And it just slid cleanly right through that piece of kiln-dried firewood. Again, no damage to the edge, finish, everything's tight, no loose guard like its little brother, and very comfortable in hand doing all of that. Would I change, modify anything about this knife? Well, I might very carefully put a sharpened swedge, not a full back edge, but a sharpened swedge on the back of it to assist with the things it can do in this grip. So let's go ahead and talk about Marshall handling. All right, we've got to pan down to the unflattering waistline view to talk about carry. Now, could I just shove this entire thing in my belt or waistband for cone carry style? Absolutely, but I've been trying to give this dangler system a chance. And I can certainly see the advertised benefits. For a longer knife, it's riding lower on my leg, gives me more clearance in the draw. Also moves around freely with me, moving out of my way, especially when I sit down. And as you can tell, sitting down is something I like to do a lot. But I really don't like my tools flopping around loose from their hangers. I prefer them firmer to my body for a couple different reasons. Also, I think I have a visibility issue. Because it's down so low, it's not so much partially hidden behind my arm or maybe a cover garment. Now, I am in a jurisdiction where I cannot fully conceal a fixed blade knife. That's illegal. But having it down here, I feel like it makes this big, shiny, scary looking thing a whole lot more eye-catching, so certainly makes me reluctant to carry it in public like this. But my biggest concern, all right, I did absolutely have to break in, stretch out that sheath to reduce the resistance to as close to zero as possible for drawing and resheathing. Why? Well, I pointed out with other wide-bellied clip point blades that sometimes in the draw, depending on the angle, you can get a snag. Also on resheathing with this one, snagging potential. All right, so with it nice and stretched out, it does draw very smoothly and cleanly. That was a conventional draw, which I can do without having to really displace my arm far behind me. Ice pick draw also potentially very clean, but you'll notice each time I am reinserting the knife with extreme caution. Why? Because given the thinness of the leather of the sheath and the sharpness of this blade and this tip, if I get either the draw with any twist in it or any inaccuracy of the angle of reinsertion, this knife is going to cut through that sheath like it's made out of warm butter. Finally, handling and my overall impressions, and there's a whole lot to unpack here. Now, I am going to be doing side-by-side comparison videos going forward, I promise, but I need to make a couple of comparisons here, both visually and feel-wise. And the first most obvious one is between the Baron Sun and the Cold Steel Wild West. Now, visually, you can see that the Cold Steel is a bit bigger, but in hand, a whole lot heavier. This one definitely crosses the line into being a short sword heavy chopper. Let's go the other way. How about its own little brother? All right, significant size difference, right? A couple of inches in blade length. Now, this knife has already become a favorite of mine in terms of how it feels, how it moves, quality, sharpness, durability. I did fix the loose clicky guard. Did I mention the guard was loose? Yeah, it's definitely become one of my favorites. So does going up a size benefit, or does it create problems in feel and handling? And I'm going to say, compared to my other larger knives that I've collected recently, this one falls into a very interesting balanced middle ground between a sizable knife that gives me a good sense of presence and authority and, well, the things I like to use these for, and, well, carryability and nimbleness in hand. So let's go ahead and start from the friendly end. And Cold Steel needs to take some notes on how to make a knife with a squarish grip, because this one is just slim enough and it's rounded in all of the right places and tapered in all of the right places. I didn't have to make a single adjustment to it, and it feels like it was made to fit my hand. Guard also is of just the right shape for me, stays out of my way, especially when I'm rotating the blade towards me in that North American Bowie style. Yeah, it's not hooking back into my hand. I've got just enough clearance. Extremes of grip. I can choke all the way up. Feels great with that taper up here. And then I can lock my thumb up above the guard for not only utility use, but close-in chopping, slashing, and stabbing. Versus choking down a little bit the other way. I can actually get into a saber grip here, which I don't recommend. One, because it's not nearly secure in the hand, is wrapping your thumb around it. And two, under impact, your thumbnail's kind of going straight into metal right there. That's never fun. But this is great for getting that tip in line with the arm for thrusting and for those more moulinet-like slashes, chops, snap cuts. So yeah, feels great in the different grip orientations. Rotated, edge towards me, North American Bowie style, and you saw that rotation is really quick given the grip shape. Really appreciating this. I've mentioned it in previous videos. Being able to use that clip point, which I can use in the conventional grip for back cutting, but in this grip, I feel like the blade has enough length and mass and guard that I could potentially parry with it. And in this grip, I'd be doing it with not only a hook, but spine that's not going to get chewed up, meeting another piece of steel. So that's good. Plus the hooking action of that tip. And we need to talk about thrusting geometry. Despite the broadness of this blade, that needle fine tip penetration is phenomenal. And consider for a moment, academically speaking only, I don't want to lose my monetization, the potential wound channel something like this could create. Just some food for thought. Haven't sharpened the back edge yet, which would make that a whole lot more effective. But I need to show you something. I'm going to do a video on this, comparing it in the future, but here's the short version. If I extend the knife, and we'll go ahead and do that saber grip, which gets it as much in line with my arm as possible for the straightest thrust tip-on possible. But look how far I'm having to extend not only my grip, but my wrist downwards to do that. In
what I consider the handshake grip I'm more comfortable in. Tip's a bit out of line now, right? A little bit more belly on, tip off. But as soon as I rotate it around into this grip, yeah, look where that tip is pointing now. In line with my arm. I'm really appreciating what that's doing for me. So yeah, some very interesting utility in the different grips on the blade. All right, speaking of which, flip it around into reverse grip. You saw me do my patented finger twirl, which I don't recommend because it's not very secure. What about pinch flipping? All right, it does have kind of this bird's head hook that makes me nervous with my stubby little fingers. If that were to snag my hand in the wrong place while I'm doing this, it might throw the blade out of my hand at the worst possible time. Not that there would be a good time for that to happen, especially with a knife that's this sharp. But I can kind of get away with it. I certainly would not want to do it under any kind of adrenaline. And I don't recommend transitioning a knife grip under adrenaline anyway. Do it the most careful version that you can or not at all. But in the reverse grip, and here's my finger twirl again, the belly of that blade is great for slashing. And I am going to do some comparison tests to see exactly how effective or not that is. Tip geometry, though, in this grip, yeah, it is definitely more of a hook. So let's flip it around the other way. And one thing I mentioned about this with these S-curve guards is the way that kind of locks into your palm for added stability does take the blade a bit out of line with your arm, but not enough, I feel, that it's a problem. But what you're getting out of this, well, take a look at the difference in the tip angle between those two positions. I'm getting a much cleaner stab this way. Plus, when I do sharpen this back edge, it almost kind of functions a little bit like a karambit. Not quite, but you kind of get the idea. And I've got all of this sharp belly back here for action going this way. So yeah, awesome in the forward grip, reverse grip. This is a cutter. This is a thruster. This is a snap cutter. It's just an excellent all-around knife, and it's a pretty awesome, durable tool. Now, I've heard some reviewers complain about quality control of Bear & Son, that it's inconsistent, but I'm thinking that their knives have evolved in design over the years, because I already mentioned the specs on this knife don't match what's existing on their websites. And I'm also seeing a knife with a different blade shape, different edge profile, including, I think I'm seeing hollow ground knives. This one is not. Very different. So I think they are evolving their design. Speaking of which, spoiler alert, I did, well, just order their new version of their freedom fighting Bowie. And all of the descriptions say that that is a hollow ground blade, and I do not prefer hollow ground blades, but every picture looks like it's flat saber ground blade. So I reached out and asked them, is it hollow ground or is it saber ground? And they said, oops, yeah, really it is a flat saber grind. So I said, thank you, awesome, and pushed the buy button. So to be continued. But until the to be continued, if you have any questions about this knife, have other Bear & Son products, other clip point Bowies, let's get our conversation going as usual in the comments. Otherwise, as always, thank you so much for watching, following my journey, subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, and I hope to see you back for the next installment of Mike's Big Martial Knife Exploration Journey.